Hello, wise guys! How much money does Tony Soprano really make per year? We uncover Tony Soprano's total income, exploring both legal and illegal sources. And more importantly, how much would Tony Soprano make these days? Straight up, Tony was pulling in way more than the rumored figure everyone's throwing around. The numbers will shock you, so watch the video to the end. To gauge Tony's annual income accurately, we must scrutinize both legal and illicit revenue streams that fill his coffers. Illicitly, he engages in loan sharking, executive games, protection, extortion, real estate scams, stock fraud, and cash envelopes from underlings. Legally, income flows from Satriale's pork store, the Bada-Bing strip club, and the Barone Sanitation waste management business. However, the legal facade belies a criminal undercurrent, as we'll explore in detail later. Let's begin our financial exploration with the waste management business and Barone Sanitation. In The Sopranos, Tony strategically solidifies his main income source as a waste management consultant at Barone Sanitation. Rather than directly contributing to Barone's revenue, he safeguards their routes through coercion, enabling monopolistic price dictation. This unique economic dynamic elevates Tony to the top 5% of earners in the country. The typical salary for a waste management consultant in the US ranges from $99,000 to $129,000 per year. Tony's commitment to maintaining a legitimate front is crucial for justifying his income lawfully and deflecting IRS scrutiny. Yet, Tony's ingenuity doesn't stop there. The Soprano crew pilfers funds from Barone Sanitation's gross income before official records, creating an unreported income stream that dodges both taxation and IRS attention. Speculation surrounds Tony's waste management earnings, with figures ranging from $1 to $2 million. To navigate the fluctuating landscape of Barone Sanitation's diminishing returns, a reasonable estimate places Tony's annual income at around $1.5 million, earned from feeding the local fish with asbestos.
Back up. Take it easy.
In the strategic underworld of Sopranos' Season 2 executive poker games, observe Sunshine deftly pocketing chips, tapping them on the table, and discreetly funneling them into a coffee can. This ritual isn't a mere quirk. It's the rake collection, a slice claimed by the house from each pot in this clandestine high-stakes gamble. Unlike the casino realm here, the rake lacks a cap. According to The Sopranos, one such game brings in $80,000 in net profit for Tony's crew. To amass $80,000 in rake across a single night necessitates an exorbitant rate. The nocturnal showdown, wrapped by 9 p.m., spanned a mere 15 hours, equating to a staggering $5,300 per hour raked in by the clandestine establishment. Beyond the poker dynamics, the money-lending facet emerges as a discrete sideline. In a world where lugging around substantial cash is imprudent, players discreetly borrow their buy-ins from Tony. Upon repayment, a week's VIG, typically around 3%, is added. Drawing a parallel to credit card dynamics, Junior underscores that some individuals accept interest as long as it remains manageable. The convenience of a debt-financed buy-in, coupled with the safety of avoiding late-night escapades with hefty cash, makes the arrangement enticing for those navigating the precarious underworld of Jersey. But how much of the profits from the game go to Tony Soprano's piggy bank? Figuring this out is quite easy, as some details are provided to us by the show itself. During one of the dialogue between Junior and Tony, both agree on a fixed percentage for Junior, namely 15%. That leaves 85% for Tony, Paulie, and Silvio. Since Soprano holds the throne in the family, it can be assumed that he will take at least 50% of the remaining sum, and Silvio and Paulie will split the rest of the money in half. So, let's grab our calculators. 85% of $80,000 is $68,000. We divide that amount in half and we have $34,000. Disclaimer: I'm not taking Christopher into account, as he didn't occupy a significant role in the family hierarchy until the last few seasons of the show, so his share is probably as big as the hole in Brendan Fallone's head.
Hi, Jack. Bye, Jack.
Unfortunately, The Sopranos does not specify how often such games are played, so we are assuming a frequency of a monthly basis. Once again, we grab our calculators, multiply $38,000 by 12 months, and get $456,000. That's how much Tony Soprano makes from card games annually. It's time to talk about the envelopes of money Tony Soprano receives from his underlings on a regular basis. In the Mafia, money flows from the bottom to the top, and the chain looks like this. Associates give money to soldiers, soldiers bring cash to captains, and captains send money to the boss. To get an accurate figure, we need to figure out how many captains and soldiers the Soprano family has at its disposal. The official Sopranos Wikipedia states that on average there are 5 captains in the family, each with 10 soldiers under his wing. Right away, we can remove associates from the equation, because the latter bring in dough when they manage to do business, and they have no regular source of income, nor are they officially considered part of the family. However, we can safely say how much each soldier is obliged to kick up per week. In one episode of The Sopranos, we see Chrissy bringing Paulie an incomplete amount of money, which Paulie is not satisfied with.
I thought I made myself clear.
Fucking college ball. But I learned a valuable lesson.
Chrissy starts to make excuses, but Paulie cuts him off halfway through and warns him that the natural canopy is obliged to pay him a minimum of $6,000 weekly no matter what.
But it's gonna cost you another 2 G's as a reminder not to fuck it up. I make myself clear?
Now that we know the specific figure, we only have to multiply the amount by the number of soldiers in the family, and we get the weekly income generated by the soldiers. Multiply 6,000 by 50 soldiers, and we get $300,000 weekly. Some are mistaken in thinking that capos and soldiers pay separate tribute, but this is baloney. The capos receive money from the soldiers and then kick up the boss a percentage of the amount.
Give me $1,000.
Given Tony's greed and based on official sources, I doubt Soprano takes 25% of the revenue, so it would be safe to assume that Soprano gets about 30 to 40% of the cash. As always, we take averages, so we work with the figure of 35%, which is $105,000 per week. There are 52 weeks in a year. Multiply 52 by 105,000, and we get $5,460,000.
Yes, motherfucker!
In one episode of The Sopranos, when the Esplanade project was just getting off the ground, during a scene of dialogue between Tony and Ralphie, the latter notes that Tony received $300,000 from the project. In the HUD scheme, the Sopranos invest $500,000 through a frontman, Dr. Fried, aiming to buy 4 low-cost houses at $125,000 each. They manipulate house values with a deceptive appraiser, inflating them to $300,000. The strategy is to secure a mortgage based on the inflated value, buying the houses from their own frontman and pocketing the profit. To navigate HUD's criteria, they enlist support from figures like State Assemblyman Zellman and nonprofit operator Maurice. Maurice, seemingly aiming to revitalize dilapidated houses, offers Dr. Fried's houses at $300,000 each. Zellman advocates for Maurice, securing a $1.2 million mortgage with HUD's backing. The intricate plan yields a $700,000 profit, with Maurice and Zellman claiming 10% each, and the Sopranos netting $560,000. Half of this goes to Tony, leaving him with a substantial $280,000. Well, it's hard to say exactly how many debtors Tony has in his notebook, but we'll assume that Artie and Scatino owed Tony at the same time. As we remember, Artie borrowed $50,000 and Davey $45,000. Let's also assume that they had the same interest rate, which means 1.5% weekly. Let's say they both couldn't pay off the loan in full, so they had to pay 1.5% of the debt every week. Artie has to pay $750 a week, and Davey has to pay $675. It turns out that Tony Soprano receives $1,425 weekly from both friends. Multiply the amount by 52 weeks, and we get $74,100 per year. Naturally, Tony has much more debtors, and the loan percentage for them will be different, most likely 5%. But we agreed to take into account only 2, so the numbers are on your screens.
Tony, I'm sorry. I'm just having some bad luck.
Pump and dump is an illicit scheme orchestrated by organized crime. In a rented space, deceptive calls hype up a stock's financial potential to naive investors. As these investors rush in, the stock's value rises. The pump. Unbeknownst to them, the callers are the stock owners. The charade concludes with the dump, as the stock, now overvalued, is sold off for profit, leaving betrayed investors in its wake. In The Sopranos, Tony's team has 400,000 shares. The price per share is 60 cents. At the end of the scam, the price per share rises to 80 cents.
You're supposed to push Webistics.
It turns out that net income for each share is 20 cents. We multiply 20 by 400,000, we get $80,000 cash. As far as memory serves, this venture is a first. Success here, even with a modest $80,000 profit, opens the door to a more regular pursuit. Imagine a dozen iterations annually, and voila, $800,000 each year. As usual, Tony takes half of the money, which equals $400,000 or 400K HDTV compatible TV sets.
Quella è una bella televisione. HDTV compatible.
I think the best example in the series is Shlomo Teitelman. In the episode Denial, Anger, Acceptance, Shlomo enlists Silvio to broker a deal with Tony Soprano regarding the Flyaway Motel. Facing a son-in-law's merciless extortion for 50%, Shlomo proposes a 25% concession if Tony can secure a divorce. Reluctantly agreeing, Shlomo enters an uneasy partnership. I did an analysis, and it turns out that a hotel like Shlomo's brings in about $90,000 in net profit per month. Tony owns 25% interest. Accordingly, the Sopranos' share would be $270,000 each year. We divide the amount in half, and we get $135,000, which are successfully sent under Tony's mattress.
And the Romans? Where were they now?
You're looking at him, asshole.
How much money the Bada-Bing, as a business, was bringing in each year? First off, it's impossible to know even with computers.
And obviously that's not possible even with computers.
Drawing parallels with real-life strip clubs in Bergen County, which raked in a total revenue of approximately $5 million in 2022, we can make a speculative leap to estimate the Bing's income. Adjusted for inflation to 2001, the Bada-Bing likely netted around $2.75 million annually. The primary revenue streams emanate from the fervor of Friday and Saturday night extravaganzas, featuring the lucrative lap dances and spirited drink sales. However, fiscal transparency demands subtracting the input VAT, a substantial $412,500, and accounting for around $160,000 in various expenses. Crunching the numbers leaves us with a net revenue of approximately $2.2 million. Even if you subtract all the ice Georgie was wasting, it's still a lot of money.
What the fuck you doing?
What, Tone?
You're wasting fucking ice.
Silvio is acting as the official owner of the club, but although it's not on paper, I'm sure Tony owns the lion's share of the joint. Given their friendly relationship, I would guess that Sil and Soprano split the revenue, if not in two, then at least 60-40, with Tony owning 40%. With a simple calculation, we get $871,000. Now let's talk about Satriale's revenue. The Sopranos does not say what the income of the store is, so we would turn to real examples again. On the internet, there is information that on average, the owner of a butcher store can count on from $50,000 to $100,000 of net profit annually. We will take the average figures and get $75,000 a year. Given that Satriale's was owned by Tony's father, Johnny, it would be logical to assume that Tony solely owns the store, so all the profits go to Soprano's pockets. Certainly not as lucrative a business as Pokemon cards, but still.
What? Pokemon cards.
Now let's talk about the so-called protection. In mafia language, this term is called pizzo. In return for paying the pizzo, businesses receive protection and can enlist neighborhood mafiosi to cut through bureaucracy or resolve disputes with other tradesmen. According to the University of Palermo, the pizzo averages $512 per month for retail traders and $633 for hotels and restaurants. As we see in The Sopranos, the best days of the mafia are gone. So the glorified crew only manages to collect pizzo from some of the local tradesmen like Vic Caputo, the owner of Caputo's Poultry, as well as from businesses that aren't exactly legal in nature, like Bahama Skies, where Furio was sent to collect debts. It's hard to state how much profit this racket makes, but my guess would be a very small portion. Well, because giant franchises have taken over much of the commerce these days, and the mafia is not in a position to shake down money from behemoths like Starbucks, which is exactly what we see in The Sopranos. Besides, Tony doesn't collect pizzo himself. The family's soldiers do that. So the income from this venture is already included in the 35% we talked about when we were counting the cash envelopes. Of course, if you have any guesses about the approximate number of businesses from which Tony collects pizzo, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. It's greatly appreciated. Now, all we have to do is add up all of Tony Soprano's incomes to find out how much money Tony makes each year. Back again, with the proviso that it's a lucky year for Tony and things are going smoothly, then Soprano is making $9.5 million. But we're interested in knowing how much money that is when taking inflation into account, right? Let's use the calculator from Benny Fazio's pencil case again and do a little math. Let's take the summer of 2003 as a base, that is, the events of the 4th season of The Sopranos. An inflation calculator shows that the $9.5 million earned in the summer of 2003 is roughly equal to $16 million nowadays. So the $5 million that most media resources are talking about is a piffle, even disregarding inflation. Nowadays, Tony Soprano would make $16 million annually. Therefore, subscribe to VANO VHS to watch the most decent Sopranos breakdowns on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to VANO VHS and hit the like button. And if you want to show some love to VANO VHS, you can now buy us a coffee. Check out the link on your screens.